Good morning. Happy Sunday. Here we are in the last chapter of 1 Samuel, chapter 31. I don't want to look at this in detail, but I'm sure you will read it or have read it. This is the sad ending of Saul, his sons killed in the battle by the Philistines, and he and his armor-bearer up on the mountain, and it's all he's not going to get out of this, and he asks his armor-bearer to kill him, but he won't do it. And then Saul falls on his own sword, and his armor-bearer does the same thing and dies with him. So they all that died that day together. And then verse 7 says, the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley, and those in the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead. They forsook their cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. It was a great rout. It was a great defeat. A terrible thing. And the Philistines abused Saul and his sons' bodies, and the men of Jabesh Gilead took Saul's body and the bodies of his sons, and gave them a proper burial and mourned for them. It's a very sad chapter, but the thought I wanted to say was, David, right up until this moment, had no idea how long his exile from his own country would be. It had already been 13 years or so. It may well go on. I mean, Saul was not an old man. He wasn't young, but he wasn't an old man. He might have gone on he was still well enough to be leading his people in battle. And the thought I just had was, whenever things are really, really bad, and we feel we can't go on, and we look and think ahead, and we think, I don't know how much longer I can stand this, I can live with this. The change came for David very suddenly and unexpectedly. After all, there'd been many battles with the Philistines and other warring groups that Saul had engaged with. There was no reason to believe that this one would be any different. David did not know when the change would come, but when it came suddenly. And so what I want to say to you is that even you may reach the point where you think God has not even seen where you are or noticed what is happening to you, and that's not true. He knows. He is on your side. He is working behind the scenes to bring things about, to bring you that peace and prosperity, that blessing that he wants to give to you. He's at work where you can't see him at work. And our responsibility is simply, as David did right up to the end of chapter 30, he lived his life with God. He committed everything to God. He asked God's guidance on everything. He lived to God's standards the best way he knew how to. And he was faithful, not knowing how long it would be before his promise would be realized. And God was faithful to him and brought it about. But the other side of it, of course, is that this is a warning to us about our lives, we get it all the time in the news. What tragedy we read this week of a gunman in Plymouth. And innocent people who had nothing to do with this man were killed. Their lives came to an abrupt end without warning. No time to seek God. No time to sort out their eternity. You get time if you know you've got a terminal illness, or you know that you are getting older. You get time to think. And if you're sensible and not foolish, you will think about the future. Excuse me, I'm a bit dry. you will prepare for it. Because if there's one thing we know in this life, that is that it is precarious. Look what COVID has done for us. How many people went into the lockdown of COVID expecting to come out the other end of it, and were struck down by this awful virus and died where they had no expectation to die. We need to be ready. I remember one lovely patient in the hospice. The staff were rather worried about her because she didn't look afraid or worried, even though her life was very close to its end. And they asked me to go and see her, and I said to her, the doctors think you don't really realise what's going on. And she said, oh, I know I'm going to die. I know it, and I know it will be soon. She said, but I'm so excited. And I said, you're excited? What do you mean? And she said, well, I've had this friend all my life, and I've talked to him every morning and every night, and most days in the day as well. I've never seen his face, and I'm going to see his face. And I'm so excited. If you had a friend you've never ever seen, you must forget about this modern contraption. We've got this modern IT which lets us see people's faces. She was in a time before FaceTime and Skype and all that stuff where you could see people miles away. And she was saying, if I had a relative in Australia that I'd never seen and I'd never met, and I knew that the plane was going to take off next week, I would be packing. I would be so excited, waiting for the day. And I said, that's wonderful. Which church do you belong to? And she said, oh, I don't go to church. She said, I'm not a church person. I wouldn't be comfortable in a church. But from when I was a child, I've always known Jesus. She was excited. She wasn't afraid of death. She was excited. But for most people, knowing that their life is going to come to an end, most people, if they have a fear of it, they don't do anything about it. They persuade themselves that death is the end and nothing happens after death. And why spend your life following Jesus when it's all going to end at death? You might as well live your life and enjoy yourself. But the fact is that if there is life after death, if we are going to rise from the dead, surely it would be better to have served God in this life and be prepared to meet him in the next. We should be excited about the end of our life, not fearing it, because the end of our life means the transition from this world to the next. So, this chapter says suddenly things can change, and we never realize just how suddenly things can change. And we need to think about things in advance of that suddenness, and to know that suddenly the thing God had promised us will come about. Suddenly we will find ourselves the other side of the promise of God that has been there, the other side of the change that God is going to bring about in our lives, whatever that change is going to be. That's my thought for the day, and we'll begin 2 Samuel tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.